Everybody loves power. I mean, it's probably one of the most useful things to have in a society. And the, I mean, you can do you can do anything with the right amount of power. There's actually a really great quote about power. It's from a Twitter user that I love named Loblob. He states that McDonald's actually does serve breakfast all day, or past 10:30 at least, if you have a gun. Unfortunately, this quote was made in 2013, and McDonald's has appropriately responded to the tweet and now serves breakfast all day. But I think the main takeaway is still relevant and the same. Power is still at the back of everyone's mind, and it's something that people are willing to do a little to get. Unfortunately, we've seen our own elected leaders do what they must to get power, and or to at least to have power over our political system. We've seen a lot of evidence towards gerrymandering in even our recent election. We see a lot of mudslinging and polarization. It's almost become commonplace to make fun of the other party online and in like very professional debates. It's no longer even become like safe to talk about politics at the dinner table. It's one of those two big no-nos. You can't talk about sex or politics. And this is a polarization problem. It should be normal to talk about politics. And I've done my research online. I've gone through a lot of credible studies and seen them through credible lenses, incredible people, sorry, and have concluded that the best way to combat polarization is through election reform. If we elect more moderate leaders or more agreeable by the masses, then we wouldn't really have this problem. And I think it's in part because of three things. First would be the negative effects of our partisan primaries. The second would be because of the ridiculous amount of money coming into our political system. And third, because of the gerrymandering that helps keep these people in power. I will be going over all three and why they're bad and some solutions to these issues. If it ain't broken, don't fix it. That's kind of the attitude that people have towards our primaries. After all, the primaries are being held by parties which are electing their party leaders for our presidential and smaller elections, and the parties are just there to rally voters. But these parties have been doing their primaries partisan, which means that only Republicans can vote on the Republican nominee and Democrats the same. This has led towards some of the negative polarization we see today. We actually see through some of Pew Research's graphs that there's been a growing trend of polarization, and this is due in part because of the disappearance of moderate candidates. And if we were to change some of our primaries to be nonpartisan and allow maybe both sides to vote, we'd see an upward tick in moderate candidates. In 2012, unfortunately, there was a California top-down primary which didn't have any positive effects or positive trends towards moderate candidates, but there were some jungle primaries where candidates were not tied to a party, and we just elected two candidates, and it did show upward trends towards moderate candidates. I think if this were to be implemented more, we'd see less polarization because these candidates would be at least a little more agreeable on both sides. We also see an issue in our political system through the Citizens United case. This is a very, very, very famous case. It's the 2010 Citizens United had made an unlimited cap on political donations. This is it can't really be argued against because it is a form of free speech which should be protected. But at the same time, a lot of people can see where the problem arises in these unlimited political donations. People can be influenced by money. And when these donations are coming maybe in like parties or at the golf course, there's some quid pro quo corruption that can't really be monitored. If you rub my back with $30 million, I'll rub yours and maybe vote on a political bill this way. There's no real indications of these, but we can see that over $1.2 billion have been poured into just our federal elections since the case, which is a ridiculous amount of money. And imagine the effects in state elections, where they're not under the federal magnifying glass. It can be disastrously worse than the little we've been able to track today. And this needs to be changed for people to even have trust in their political system and want to change it or reform it in the first place. Lastly, the biggest problem as that the Electoral College faces is gerrymandering. This is another problem that no one can really deny is a problem. Even our own government has accepted that this is a problem in our election process. The Congressional Research Service has, this wasn't directly towards gerrymandering, but in their census data, they did state that once the census data was gone through and after the elections, when they did redistribute the lines in accordance to the data, it would be done by more third parties and more third and hybrid redistribution. And this is in part because we've seen in even our most recent elections by there's a conversationalist article on this, how states like Texas, Pennsylvania, North Carolina have all been heavily gerrymandered towards a specific party and have been gerrymandered since as long as we've been voting. And if the lines were to be drawn through hybrid, which is a combination of both sides, or even by a third party or independent party, we would definitely see a different, it's no question that we'd see a different outcome because due to these being swing states. Today, I have shown you all the negative effects of voting in primaries, of the Citizens United case, and of gerrymandering in our political process. I hope that, unfortunately, because I can't, make the government just reform on its own, I hope that I've shown you some awareness towards some of the problems we have in our elections. I also hope that when these issues do arise on the ballot, you do think twice about what you're voting for, as your vote does matter. Please keep this in mind when it does come up, and thank you for your time.